So I'm here to present to you today Stu. His new album is coming out May 12th, Little Red Stream. We have it right here. And thank you for inviting me to your home. And we're here to talk about your beautiful work.
Yeah, thank you. It's such an honour to be talking to a published author. I think we both have a lot in common with sort of being very open with our truth and our stories, and at, you know, a little bit of a cost because, you know, everyone knows all these sort of deep personal stories about you. But
yes, exactly.
There's a lot in it, and it can be very rewarding and really help you let go.
Yeah. And heal.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's get into this.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into this incredible album.
So I'm going to play you each song.
Excellent.
And we're going to have a chat about each one.
I may have already listened to it.
Well, some of them, not all of them. But no, not all of them. Some of them will be new. You've been there through some of the late nights. I've been like, listen to this, tell me what's wrong with it. Try and help me edit it. What can I do better? But this will be a first time listening to the full finished work. And then we'll discuss sort of the thoughts as a whole. And yeah, let's get underway.
I'm honoured. Absolutely honoured. So your first song, was it the first song that you wrote for the whole album?
It actually wasn't. The album was written through the last sort of 12 months.
Right.
And I haven't put them in chronological order because I think the album works better with the stories telling an overarching story of a mixture of mental health, grief and loss, but also self-empowerment. And I've sort of broken up into sort of the emotions through the album. Right. So the first of the album is particularly about sort of feeling that no one is listening to you, no one understands you, and it sort of makes you feel almost a bit crazy, and that you almost start not trusting yourself. And this first song is me fighting that and trying to stay true to who I am, knowing that I'm enough within me, but then still having the doubt put in my mind from other people saying things about me that aren't true, or having people so close to me that have then turned their back on me, and then me questioning a lot about sort of my life and those people's roles in my life and what it means to lose those people. And this song was sort of me, it's almost a retaliation to that. And it's like, fine, I'm gonna play the game and I'm gonna win. You might win this battle, but I'm gonna win the war. And that war is sort of the justice and sort of the karmic powers of what you put out into the world and what you give people.
I think you're the voice to what a lot of people feel. So
and that's what I want to do. I mean, this, you know, you feel all these heavy emotions as a person, as a human walking this planet, and society tells you that, you know, certain emotions aren't okay to be voiced and certain emotions you shouldn't talk about. And I think that's such a problem in our society, and it took me a lot to be able to just hand this over to anyone to listen to, because it's like someone's reading a diary.
Yes.
But I think it's important that people think it's okay to talk about these things because it's just the human experience.
Yeah, that was my speaker turning off.
Yeah.
And you might hear a dog in the background once in a while.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next song.
Yeah.
Well, you have to listen to that song. It's a beautiful way to start the album, Little Red Stream. So Stu, Little Red Stream, your second song and the name of the album. What does Little Red Stream mean for you?
Yeah, so the album actually originally had a different name for a very long time.
What was that?
It was actually going to be called Phoenix, which is actually the next song.
The third song.
But when that's more about the self-empowerment, and I didn't feel that fully represented the whole album as a whole, because that's sort of more how I was feeling when I was finishing the album. And I think when I wrote this song, I was just thinking, yes, this encompasses the overall arching theme of this album. And it actually derives from sort of this notion that you're always connected to a soulmate through an invisible red string. And this can be found through multiple different cultures and societies. There's I've seen it pop up many times in different sort of literature or shows or movies or that sort of thing, and I wanted to do my own spin on it.
And even wise women's circles back in the day.
Yeah, I heard that. I found it really interesting, and I only found that out the other day. So it just keeps unraveling as I learn more, which I love, because it's interesting to hear different people's interpretations of a similar theory, and I sort of wanted to take that and turn on its head a bit and make it more, rather than sort of a little cute idea that you're always connected to this person, turning it more into the connection that you feel with this supposed soulmate is almost suffocating and it's strangling you, and it...
Yes, that's the heaviness I feel in that song.
Yeah, and I even say one of the lyrics is, soulmates come and go, but there's a line that keeps you so close. And I think that sort of captures it. So I'm not saying this person's my soulmate, I'm always going to be connected to my whole life, even though that's the idea, but it's more that feeling that in that moment you feel like that person's your soulmate, you've lost them, and these emotions are just strangling you. And
haven't we all felt that?
yeah, everyone goes through it at one stage in their life, and if you don't, you're really lucky. So this is sort of my interpretation on that, and I just think it encompasses where I was going with the album as a whole.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And as you can see in the album cover, my amazing graphic designer friend Avery really captured exactly what I had in mind when I wrote that song.
The essence of the love in your soulmate just completely
wrapped around you, and a lot of people look at that, and I think when I was making the video I put a little teaser up and people think, well, what are you doing? But I think once they listen to the album as a whole, and it'll make a lot more.
It's an incredible front cover. I absolutely
They did such an amazing job. I'm so proud of them and the work that we all created. And yeah, it's not just a singular effort. I think when you do these works, you want your really good friends involved as well, and that makes it even more special.
It's been an incredible journey.
Yeah.
As they say.
It sounds like we're wrapping it up, but we're only at song 2. So.
Let's go. So Phoenix, my favourite
So far, you're only 3 songs in.
So you talk about your soldier. Who is your soldier in your song?
So the song started off with me writing about someone who is a very dear friend of mine who always sort of supported me through this particular situation I was going through, where a lot of people turned their back on me and didn't believe me. And it was sort of meant to be sort of a nice song about a friend of mine. But then it naturally developed into this song that was a bit more of a broad span than that, into sort of my life as a whole and who's been my soldier. And I think there's this sort of notion that you need to look for your soldier in someone else, your knight in shining armor is coming to save you.
Yes, that's what we're taught.
Well, that's what we're taught.
Tradition.
Yeah, and that's, I think you got to have that within you. And this song is me singing to myself, and it's me saying you were your soldier when the world went black, when you were bleeding from your back, when no one trusted you, when no one believed you, you were the one that stood by your side. Because in the end of the day, that's all you have.
Yeah, yourself.
Yeah, and I think when I wrote the song, the idea that you're born into this world alone and you die alone, although that's very morbid,
not at all.
That idea was in my head when I wrote this song. And yeah, it was a very difficult time, but I like to think of this song as my self-empowerment song, because I wouldn't be the same person today if I didn't go through what I went through then. And I think I built a much stronger, a much more happy life from the base of that experience.
Yes, I've seen the transformation of you over the last 12 months.
Yeah, it's
see that.
Yeah, and that's sort of where the idea of the phoenix comes in, where, you know, you feel like if
you can't steal my next question.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you ask me next.
Where did the phoenix come from?
So the phoenix,
because it's a very powerful, strong.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your question. So the idea of the phoenix sort of came from, you know, more a mental health perspective for me, and you know, I struggle with mental health.
As do I.
Yeah,
That's
a lot of people, and a lot more people that care to admit that they do. And I think that's what needs to change. I think people need to be more okay to feel able to talk about this stuff. And I thought sort of this idea of the phoenix was an idea of hope, sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, that you can see that there is an end to it and that you can build a new life. And I'm at the other end of that now, where I feel like I've got there, but when I wrote the song I hadn't quite got there yet, and this was sort of my motivation to get there and to rise from the ashes and be a better me.
Yeah. It's incredible.
And I just wanted to say, your book inspired this song so much. It was so inspirational to me to be so open and honest with my songwriting, and particularly this song. This was sort of one of the songs that was, I really opened up because of reading your book. And I just want to say a massive thank you, not only from me, but for anyone who read that book and got a feeling of inspiration from it and empowerment from it.
I love that. Thank you. I'm honoured. And I guess that's what, being vulnerable is very hard these days, and you feel you're scared of what people are going to think and being judged. So putting it out there and really putting your raw self out there is it's hard. But I think the more people do it, I think the more we can all connect and talk about it.
And
real life.
Yeah, and the only way to help these issues is talking about it. You know, you go to a psychologist to talk about it. And obviously there are certain things that you don't talk about publicly for your own sort of safety. But just an openness to the discussion, I think, needs to become... I think we've definitely made progress, but I think there's a long way to go, especially with social media. I think that there is a long way to go there, especially how we treat others.
Yeah, we're getting there,
slowly. On to song 4.
Vintage Wine. I love this song. There's just so much heart in it. I just, you feel it. And the piano for me, I mean, I love piano, but is that you playing?
Yeah.
The piano in it at the start and the melodies throughout, it's just beautiful. Tell me, what Vintage Wine, what's it about?
So, I just started playing around on the piano one day. And I sort of started developing this like sort of chord progression. And I sort of just left it the way I first played it. I didn't add any drums, I didn't add any other instruments, I kept it very simple. And when I listened to it, it made me think of my grandmother. Just the softness about it, the flow of the chords, it just brought me back to the final moments I had with her. And I've always wanted to write a song about my grandmother, but I just never really knew how to write something that did her justice and something that felt natural.
How long ago did you lose your grandma?
It was just over a year ago. And it was actually before I even released my first album, but I think it was too soon for me then to write a song about her then. And I only wrote this song very recently. It was actually the last song I wrote for the album. And it just happened very naturally. I actually had another song planned for this album, which I didn't end up putting on. And I ended up replacing it with this one, which sort of the week before I handed the album in to be processed, I changed the song out.
I'm glad this one
this
album. It's a beautiful, nostalgic song.
Yeah, and I think it makes you think about the generation that was and the one that's passing through. And you know, I've got a lyric in there about the final grape hanging from the vine, and that's sort of, to me, my grandmother represented that generation that went through World War II, the Great Depression. She told me stories about how her issues with rationing and, you know, her not being able to get all the ingredients to her wedding cake, and just things that we just take for granted so much in our modern day society. And I think I wanted the song to sort of encapsulate that. In my mind, her passing away is the final grape on the vine of that generation.
And it's hard to lose that older generation, because they teach us so much, and I think in our society we undervalue their wisdom and we push them to a side, put them in a home. But there's just so much wisdom, and instead of doing that, we need to get all that out of them, and so we can continue on instead of just letting them dry on the vine.
Yeah, exactly. And the thought of what they went through in their lives, and I just feel like we don't appreciate a lot of the things and the opportunities we're given.
Yeah, I agree.
And we live in a very disposable society. And you know, I know for sure my grandmother was on the other end of the spectrum, where she would save every single bread clip that came with the bread bag, and all the bread bags too, for that matter. But there was a lot more underneath that.
Yeah.
And it was about being content with what you had, reusing things that no longer had a purpose in that format, where nowadays we, you know, throw away, buy new, and that goes for not just products, that's emotions, people, everything. We're just so disposable in our lives. And I think I learnt a lot from my grandmother, and I think and there's a lot of things I still carry on from what she taught me, and it's quite heartbreaking that future generations won't have that wisdom to look up to.
Yeah, there's so much depth in that song, so much to...
Which is ironic, because the lyrics are quite simple.
They are, yes, exactly. But they've got, and we take so much for granted. Even my mother was saying, like, my grandma had, you know, 5 kids, and they had those washing machines that you had to pull through and be out in the cold, and you know, here we complain when we have a few loads of washing. Yeah, the washing machine does it.
Yeah, exactly. And even, you know, the houses they lived in, they'd raise a family of 5 in a 3-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom house, and the kids would just all share a bedroom. Where now, you know, people want an ensuite off every bedroom, and, you know, 4 living areas, and it's nothing will make this generation happy. It's always on to the next bigger, better thing, and it's all about materials and how we're perceived by others in society. It's not about our own internalized happiness with what we have.
Exactly. And what could you say was one of the legacies that your grandma left for you, something that she's taught you that really has stayed with you? Might be a tough one to think on the spot, but can I ask what your grandma's name was?
Mary.
Mary.
Yeah, she did not like the name. It was a name that was passed down through every generation before her, and she made sure it ended with her. Grace. Living a life with... I'm going to try not to get emotional. Living a life with a lot of grace, and not... just having a lot of people respect you. And I just hope that people think about me the way I think about her when I'm gone.
I feel the same. And we need to really take care of our elders and our aging community and our loved ones around.
Yeah, and you look back, you know, when they pass away, and you're like, oh, I should have seen them, or I should have done that, and I feel that way. And you know, when I hear people talk about their grandparents now, I always say, go see them, go visit them, because you know they're going to pass away one day, but when it happens, it's no matter how old they are, it hits you like a ton of bricks, especially if you're close to them, and you just don't realise that you're never going to get that time back.
No, never. Once it's gone, it's gone. A
Yeah.
vintage wine. Don't we all love a vintage wine?
We love a vintage
I
wine.
feel like one right now. It's kind
Yeah,
of cold.
I have to get one. But yeah, but
It's a
and that's
beautiful song.
this song is the legacy, and this song will
Stay forever.
last on. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah.
She'd be very proud.
It's gonna make me cry.
Next song.
Next song, quickly.
So, Heart Forgets the Pain. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so this song was probably the most vulnerable song that I wrote for the album. I wrote it, it was actually the second song I wrote. I remember very clearly, I was sitting on my balcony. It was during that time last year where it was raining every single day. And I was sitting on my balcony, and the clouds dispersed, and this beautiful sunset just came up through the clouds. And then I just came up with this lyric, cloudy days ending in rusty skies. And I just sat down and I just wrote this whole song out in 10 minutes. It was just after a breakup that was really difficult. It was someone that I lived with, you know, you get everything you want, you're in the relationship that you think you want, that you've always dreamt about as a kid. You know, you live together, you have a dog, you know, but unfortunately, you know, you think you can have everything you want and it falls apart. And in this case, it did. And this was my song to be like, we've been through hell together, and I just hope at the end of this, I can look at you and smile and not feel pain. That I can look at you and remember the good memories and not have the sour aftertaste of the relationship that has ended. So I think I've got to the point now where I've got through that. I am at the place beyond. I'm on the other side of the hill. But when I wrote this song a year ago, I was not there. And every day, just everything just seemed to get harder. The emotions got more intense. Like the feeling of loss and grief was just overtaking me. And this was, it actually was a letter. So I wrote this song as a letter to my ex-partner, which I never sent. And I turned it into a song. Well, it was sort of written in a song format anyway, but I decided to actually record it rather than keep it as a letter to give to my partner. So
yeah, you can really hear your vulnerability throughout it.
Yeah, because it wasn't meant to be shown to everyone. It was a song that was written with the full intent of the words that were on the page. It wasn't written in terms of, you know, I'm going to show this to people. And yeah, I think back then I just hoped that my partner, you know, I have a lyric in there saying can't remember without singing it, but what are you doing? What do you see? How do you feel? What do you think about me? It's sort of when time has passed and you haven't seen this person, you just wonder what they're thinking about. You wonder what they think about you, whether they feel the same way that you do, whether, you know, and you have all these questions in your mind that are unanswered because you're not talking to them.
Exactly.
And
Breakups are hard, and
you don't have to tell me that twice. Yeah. But it was a huge time of growth and development, and, you know, that relationship didn't work, and for certain reasons, and that's okay.
And now you can smile and look
Yeah,
back.
and, you know, I think we're both on good terms now, and we've spoken since this song was written. And yeah, it's nice that sort of what I wrote about in this song kind of manifested into reality.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And your voice throughout is just beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So Waterfalls.
Yeah.
I mean, I must admit, the first thing I think of is TLC. That was one of my favourite bands growing up. Who are before we get into what Waterfalls is all about, who are your musical
Is it not obvious?
Who's that?
Who's that? So this is a
gorgeous.
beautiful painting by Bradley that I was given as a gift from my sister, and it is of Miss Lana Del Rey, who is by far my biggest inspiration. You can hear a lot of influences in my music from Lana, and she's influenced so many artists. I'd say any artist after 2010 was influenced by Lana Del Rey in some capacity, and she has really shaped what the modern music world is like. I see so much talent in her, and she's my biggest admiration to her as an artist. But I've also got other influences such as Tovlo. So Tovlo does more sort of the electronic pop, sort of Swedish influence. So I make this joke that I'm the baby of Tovlo, and it's actually pronounced Tuvalu, but most people know her as Tovlo. I'm the baby of Tovlo and Lana. That's sort of the running joke. But yeah, I think I have a variety of influence from sort of modern day pop stars, like The Weeknd, the artists I mentioned, back to sort of bands from the 90s, even the 80s. You get the 80s influence, sitting in my mum's SUV Volvo, driving to school appointments and extracurricular activities after school, and listening to Smooth FM and all. It all has its influence. I think
Human League.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there is a bit of a gel of. I don't really have a set style or a set genre. It sort of is just a mix. It's put it all in a blender, press pulse, and that's what comes out. Pretty much.
So Waterfalls, it's still a very somber, vulnerable song.
Yes. So the whole middle of the album is sort of this more somber. It's meant to be more that at this point in the album, I'm in touch with my emotions. I'm regaining control of my emotions and how I'm feeling, and really learning to feel the emotions rather than masking them with anger or masking them with other emotions. This is where I really get to the crux of it and try and sort through it. This song I wrote when I was on a beach in Queensland in my other half of my life. Went to a work conference in Queensland and we're on a beach watching the sunrise, and I was watching just the water coming on the beach. I know it's called Waterfalls, but a beach actually inspired me for this song, and it just made me reminisce on this same relationship breakdown as the song before, and this is sort of the continuation on from that first song to be more sort of a progress 4 months on where I was at after that breakup. So it's sort of a continuation from the first song.
Yeah. Because it's quite the healing process, isn't it?
And it takes a while. It took me almost a year to really process and figure out how I was going to get through it.
I was there.
Yeah. You had to hear a lot of late night conversations and a lot of my whinging,
but how beautiful that you could put it into lyrics and make a song.
I feel so lucky and grateful that I have that there, because the alternative is bottling it up and not processing and not moving on. So I feel very grateful that I have that, and grateful that I have people who will listen and help me through the process. So.
We're grateful for your music.
That's very sweet. Thank you.
So trigger warning. Trigger warning is very different to all other songs.
Yeah, it is very different.
Because all your songs are more about your lyrics, but I feel like this one is more about the musicality of it.
Yeah, that's actually a really really good word, actually. Yeah, it was a really interesting song to produce. I had created 3 kind of instrumentals. So the first piano section, this sort of siren middle section, and this hip hop beat third section. And there were 3 different songs, and I could never figure out where I wanted to go with all 3 of them. And one day I was just in a bit of a weird mood, and I chucked them all together. And I thought, this is going to sound stupid, but, you know, why not? And I listened to it, and it just kind of worked.
Yeah, there's even a nice beat to it.
Yeah, it just sort of worked. And the lyrics hadn't really been chosen. And I sat on it for a few days, and it reminded me of what sort of a trigger experience is like. Well, for me anyway, I can't speak for other people. But the song starts with this calm, almost psychedelic-y sort of piano intro that you can kind of get lost in. But then it turns very quickly into this shut down, almost psychotic sort of sound. And it sort of reminds me of, you know, I suffer from PTSD, and I can't say I've had too many trigger events, thankfully, but I have had a few, and this is sort of the sonic version of how I would say my trigger responses feel like. I feel calm, I feel relaxed, I feel safe. But then something very small happens, and then it's like all hell breaks loose in my mind. And this is the sonic sort of free fall of those emotions. And then once you get into that beat section, you'll notice that the lyrics almost sound clouded, sort of messy. You can't even really make out some of the lyrics, and that's all purposeful. And it's meant to be these thoughts when you're in this triggered headspace, where you're triggered by a trauma response, and you've got all these thoughts and sort of insecurities just floating around. And I sort of use the term circling the drain, and they don't go away, they don't fully drain away, and they're just sort of there circling. And this song is really me rather than writing about those feelings, making it a sound.
And you could really visualize those feelings with interpretation from the music.
Yeah, and people look at me, and, you know, if they don't know me too well and they listen to this music, they think, oh, you must be a really sad, depressed person. But I actually think I'm quite bubbly and have quite a personality. But this is... this is my outlet for those negative emotions. This is how I get rid of those emotions, so I'm able to be authentically who I am and who I feel I want to be, and stop these emotions circling my brain and clouding the true reality of who I am.
But that's quite the creation. And so you sing, you play the piano, you write your music, and you come up with the production of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really realize how much work goes into making music. A lot of artists will have people doing the production for them. Obviously, you know, their production's probably a lot better quality than mine, but they have teams working on these songs, where everything you hear on this album is all me. It's me in my bedroom with my piano with Logic Pro. There's nothing else, no one else. It's just me. The only areas where I get help is with the graphic design, who I previously mentioned. My best friend Avery has done an amazing job doing for me. And my interviews, which I've got my amazing publisher helping me with.
His other best friend.
My other best friend. All my best friends, I don't have. It's too hard to pick one.
No, same.
So I have to, it's I just find the whole process so interesting, and I'm lucky that I sort of have sort of natural tendencies towards all of those areas.
It's incredible.
But it's been a huge learning experience. I mean, you listen to my first album and it's vastly different. The quality is not nearly at the same level because it's learning.
Yes.
And, you know, I knew my first album wasn't going to be perfect. I was very well aware of that. But I wanted my musical journey to be a progression. I wanted to see my progression.
Yeah, you can definitely hear it. You can definitely hear you've stepped it up a notch.
yeah, and you know, people have already asked me, what are you doing next? And I think I just need a break. Because this album was a lot to, when you're hearing it, you can hear there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of production, and it took me, 12 months to get this together. And yeah, I think sort of when this is done, I'm gonna have a break for a little bit.
Definitely. Everyone asks what's next.
Yeah. Oh,
even in writing.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, I've already started writing again, but
exactly. Yeah.
Probably not for an album. But we'll see. But yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
A lot of electronic pop.
Yeah, I sort of wanted a bit of a hip hop sort of sound at the end, and I just wanted something a bit different. And I'm all about difference and not being a cookie cutter artist. Like I like to sit on the edge of almost borderline. That's really weird. Why did you do that?
You really get that in this song.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful composition of all that.
Yeah. I think it's a good representation of what my brain goes through when I'm feeling those really intense emotions and experiences.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Heading into the last song now.
Last song.
I
can't believe it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Feels like time's flown.
I think this
once we got through all the visuals.
This song this song is very cool song. Survive You, the last song of your album, Little Red String.
Yes.
I love it. I love it because it's definitely more musical. It's got a hip hop vibe to it. You can even just dance to it a bit. So tell me, Survive You. It feels very powerful.
Yeah, so it was the first song that I did that really touched on those hip hop beats. I sort of experimented. It was sort of an experimental song for me. Definitely the prelude to Trigger Warning, which is a bit more refined hip hop sound. I chose to put it last on the album because I think it ties up the album really nicely. I think the album sort of comes full circle the time you get to this song, and it is a very powerful song. There's a lot of emotion there. I think it sounds angry, but there's the undertone of just absolute desperate sadness that is sort of hinted underneath all of the anger, which ties into the beginning of the album. But I think it just works better at the end. I originally did have it at the beginning of the album, but it just didn't feel right there.
No, it definitely goes well.
It sort of weights the bottom of the album. So again, it was this sort of breakup period. It was actually when the breakup had just happened. It was very early on in that breakup processing time. And it's just when you have all these emotions that are completely not rational, it's just because you're hurt and you not lash out physically, but you mentally lash out almost on yourself with all these emotions. And I put it into a song, and this was the result of that. And I got to have a bit of fun experimenting with different sounds. It actually took me a full year to get it right, because I originally had a original version of the song that I actually released on streaming services, and then I pulled it off because I just wasn't happy with it the way it was, and I amended it slightly to fit with this album the way that I feel like the song was meant to be to start with. So it's a song I worked on the longest, but it was actually one of the very original early ones before I even had the concept of the album.
Certainly paid off, because like I said, the musicality of it
Yeah.
And it is quite refined. I mean, you can see the work that you've put in.
Yeah, and
You can hear it.
you know, it has some interesting sounds in it. It's not polished, like, but I think that sort of makes it, that it has those interesting components to it that don't make it fit into a specific genre either. You know, I kind of view my songs as children, you know, they're born into the world, and I just sort of love them the way they are, however weird or quirky they are. I don't try and make them something that they're not, even if it doesn't fit, you know, what popular music is.
Yeah, very authentic. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how are you feeling? How are you feeling now that it's all done and it's about to be released in a week?
It's really mixed. I'm very excited. I'm incredibly nervous, but relieved, because releasing it is closing the book.
Closing this chapter.
Closing the book to this part of my life and starting a fresh slate and just handing the book over and moving on.
And seeing what happens.
Yeah, and I think I finished the album at the right time. I released it at the right time for me to feel ready for that to be over, because I think for me an album is a moment in my life, and you know, if I released it any earlier, I wouldn't have got the full spectrum of that healing process. And I think, I think I'm ready for people to hear it.
Wow.
So what
How exciting.
What did you think now after hearing the whole?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I love you, but I love how I can see your growth from your first album to your second album as well. I love that you do have highs and lows in the, it's not just the same tone. You've experimented, you've put more music into it, and you've kind of discovered this kind of other side of you.
Yeah.
I love every song. Those lyrics really tell a story.
Yeah.
Phoenix is still my favourite.
Okay.
Vintage Wine. I love Vintage Wine because of the story behind it, and this last one.
Yeah.
This last one really.
They're really I do think they're the standout ones. The other ones are, you know, I love them all, but I do think those three just have something about them that they're the ones that stick with you, I think.
And, you know, how do you feel getting all this creative energy out now?
I feel like I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Next project?
Not necessarily music. You know, I've got my other hobbies. I like to restore furniture, and as you know, I've got 2 pieces of yours in my garage that I need to work on. And one in your house that I need to work on. But yeah, I think I'm ready to move on to something a little bit different for the time being. But knowing me, it won't be too long before I'm back at the piano. Yeah.
I think it's in you. Like you'll always be playing and you'll always be writing, just as I'll always be writing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and you know.
It's always in you.
When's your next book coming out?
I don't know.
I'm waiting for that. I'll be interviewing you next time.
But Little Red String is coming out this is that Friday the 12th?
It's coming out on Friday the 12th of May. It will be out on all streaming services. I also have these physical CDs. I know, Relic.
I've bought one.
Boy, feels so weird to be getting paid.
Of course.
But you know, it's
for your accomplishment.
It means a lot. It means a lot. So I've got these Relic CDs. You know, the amount of people I've told about these, and they say, "Oh, I don't actually own a CD player anymore."
Who doesn't own a CD player? You still have to hold on to.
It's a memento of you know, of what it is, and you know, my friends put so much effort into the graphic design and making it sort of an art piece in itself. So if you want one, I've got a very limited number.
Yes, and
so
I mean, I won't give it away, but the middle of the CD as you open it up. You have to see it. It's beautiful.
It's probably the best I've ever looked in a photo.
It's absolutely beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you, Stu.
Thank you so
for
much.
letting me into your life and into your deepest emotions.
Thank you for...
It's out there for the world to see, but...
Oh, yes, it's everyone can listen to it now, but it means so much that you took the time to listen to it and talk to me about it, and yeah, it's really, yeah, just talking about it even is quite therapeutic. And
exactly. And even when we're listening to it,
reminds me of how I was feeling, and I, like, sort of when the camera was off, I was sort of talking about, I remember this is how I felt during this song, and yeah.
It's quite the emotional journey.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm glad you're sharing it with the world, and thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck.